The lights in the underground boxing club flickered harshly against the cracked concrete walls. The smell of sweat, blood, and beer hung thick in the air. People crowded around the ring, shouting, some clutching money in their fists, others just hungry for a show. It wasn't the kind of place Jason Statham usually found himself these days. He had long outgrown street fights and dodgy rings. But tonight was different. Word had gotten around about a new boxing champ in town. Name was Ricky the Rage Malone. Younger, cockier, and built like a freight train. Ricky had torn through every opponent thrown at him, and not just beating them, humiliating them. Word was he didn't just fight to win, he fought to break spirits. The last guy who faced him had left the ring with 2 broken ribs and a shattered ego. Jason wasn't here for fame, or for a payday. He was here because he hated bullies. He could have walked away, ignored the noise like he usually did. But after watching a viral video of Ricky mocking an old retired fighter after knocking him out cold, Jason knew he had to step in. That old fighter had trained Jason once when he was just a scrawny kid trying to find his way. Loyalty meant something to Jason. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as Jason walked toward the ring. He didn't come with a flashy entrance or a roaring posse. Just a black hoodie pulled over his head, black gloves hanging loose around his neck, and that calm, dangerous look in his eyes that said he wasn't here to play games. Ricky was already inside the ring, bouncing on his heels, flashing his perfect white teeth at the crowd, soaking in the attention like a rock star. When he caught sight of Jason climbing into the ring, his grin widened in a way that made Jason's blood simmer. "Oi, look at this old bloke," Ricky shouted into the mic, laughing. Didn't know the retirement home had visiting hours. The crowd roared with laughter. Jason said nothing. He simply rolled his shoulders, loosened up, and stared Ricky down like a lion sizing up a hyena. The ref, a scrawny guy who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, gave the basic rundown. No rules, no rounds, just a knockout or submission. As they squared up, Ricky leaned close, cocky smirk still plastered on his face. "Don't blink. Granddad," he said. "You'll be kissing the mat before you know it." Jason's mouth twitched. Not a smile, something closer to a promise. The bell clanged. Ricky came in fast, cocky, throwing a wild right hook meant to take Jason's head clean off. But Jason wasn't just fast. He was precise. He ducked it easily, sidestepped, and tapped Ricky on the back of the head with a mocking little jab, like swatting a mosquito. The crowd oohed. Ricky turned, his face darkening. His ego couldn't handle being toyed with. He charged again, this time with a flurry of wild punches. Jason slipped them one after another, smooth as water, not even breaking a sweat. "Come on, you little punk," Ricky snarled. "Fight me." Jason finally threw a real punch, a short, sharp jab to Ricky's ribs. The sound was dull, but it made Ricky grunt and stumble back a step. Jason didn't follow. He stayed still, patient, letting Ricky stew in his own anger. Another charge. This time, Ricky landed a glancing blow on Jason's shoulder. Jason barely moved. But when Ricky pulled back for a massive uppercut, Jason saw his opening. In one blur of movement, Jason ducked under the punch, twisted his hips, and drove a brutal left hook into Ricky's jaw. The crack was loud enough to silence the crowd. Ricky's legs buckled. He staggered back, arms flailing, eyes wide with shock. He'd never been hit like that before. Jason didn't let up. He closed the distance, unleashed a rapid-fire combo, 2 body shots, another jab to the nose, and a final devastating right cross that lifted Ricky's feet off the canvas. Ricky hit the mat like a sack of bricks. The crowd exploded. Some were screaming in disbelief, others just stood there stunned, watching Ricky twitch on the floor. Jason stood over him, breathing steady, not even a mark on his face. He pulled his hoodie back up over his head, looked around at the shocked faces, and said in a low, calm voice that carried through the noise, "Respect the ring, or get taught some." He climbed out without another word, disappearing into the night, leaving behind the broken pride of a so-called champion. The night after the fight, Jason sat alone in a quiet pub tucked away on a side street in East London. The low hum of conversations floated around him, the clinking of pint glasses, the occasional burst of laughter. It was peaceful, the way he liked it. No cameras, no reporters, no fans asking for selfies. Just the way life should be. He sipped his whiskey slowly, feeling the warmth creep through him. The fight was already old news to him. Just another reminder of why he hated getting dragged into other people's messes. He had given Ricky a lesson, not for fame, not for the cheers, but because someone needed to remind the world that respect still mattered, but outside, the world wasn't letting it go so easily. His phone buzzed for the 100th time that evening. He ignored it again. The few times he glanced at the screen, it was the same. Messages from old friends, reporters, even some Hollywood types sniffing around for a fight movie deal. It all made Jason's skin crawl. Meanwhile, Ricky, the Rage Malone, was plastered all over social media, but not the way he used to be. Clips of him getting knocked out were going viral. Memes were everywhere. Rage quit was the most popular caption. Another showed Ricky's face after Jason's punch with the words, "When reality hits harder than dreams." Jason almost felt bad. Almost. But Ricky wasn't taking it lying down. Somewhere across town, Ricky sat in a grimy gym surrounded by his crew, his jaw swollen and a deep bruise forming across his cheek. His hands were wrapped tight as he pounded away at a heavy bag, each thud echoing with anger. "I'm not letting it end like that," Ricky growled. "He made me look like a bloody fool." His manager, a greasy little man named Vince, hovered nearby, wringing his hands. "Mate, listen, maybe just let it cool off, yeah? He's not someone you want to poke. Jason Statham's a bloody killer even if he's out the game." Ricky spun around, eyes wild. "I don't care if he's the Queen's own bodyguard. Nobody humiliates me like that. Set it up, Vince. I want a rematch. A real one. A proper stage. Cameras, lights, the whole bloody world watching." Vince hesitated, but the way Ricky was glaring at him, he knew better than to argue. He nodded slowly. "All right, but you better be ready, Rick, because this time, you're fighting more than a bloke. You're fighting a bloody legend." Within hours, the buzz had started. "Ricky challenges Jason Statham to official rematch," blared across social media. The story was everywhere. TV hosts debated whether Jason would even accept. Pundits argued about the ethics of celebrities fighting civilians. Fight promoters started rubbing their hands together, seeing dollar signs in every headline. Back at the pub, Jason finished his whiskey and tossed a few notes onto the table. He pulled his hood up as he stepped out into the chill night air. He could feel it already, the shift in the energy around him, the tension in the city. He hadn't asked for a second fight. He didn't need it. But Ricky wasn't going to let it go, and deep down, Jason knew something. Walking away this time wouldn't fix it. If he didn't shut Ricky down properly, in front of the whole world, this kid was going to spiral, and he'd drag a lot of others down with him. As Jason turned the corner into the dark, quiet street, he spoke softly to himself, almost like a prayer. "All right then, kid. You want a show? I'll give you the kind of show you'll never forget." The days leading up to the fight were chaos. Everywhere Jason went, people stared, whispered, pointed. News vans parked outside his modest home. Drones buzzed overhead. Offers from sports networks flooded in. Everyone wanted exclusive rights to the showdown between the washed-up action star and the arrogant boxing champ. Jason hated every second of it. He never cared about being a celebrity. Fame, to him, was like a bad smell you couldn't wash off. All he wanted was peace. But Ricky had dragged him back into the spotlight like a moth to a flame. Meanwhile, Ricky was loving every bit of it. He was on talk shows, posting daily videos from his gym, flashing his bruises like battle scars. In one viral clip, he sneered at the camera and said, "Last time was luck. Old man Statham's got one good punch left, and he wasted it." Jason didn't bother watching it. He already knew Ricky's game. Bait him, rattle him, make him angry enough to slip up. It was amateur psychology. And Jason had seen better minds than Ricky's fall flat. Still, Jason knew better than to walk into a fight half prepared. He started training quietly, away from the cameras. No fancy gyms, no posh trainers. Just a battered old warehouse, a few heavy bags, and a crusty ex-coach named Mick, who owed him a favor. Mick was brutal. He didn't treat Jason like a star or a friend. He barked orders, made him run till his lungs burned, made him spar until his knuckles split. Jason took every hit, every bruise, every aching muscle without complaint. Pain was the price of sharpening the blade, and he planned to cut deep. One night after a grueling session, Jason sat on the warehouse steps, dripping sweat, staring out at the dark city skyline. Mick came out, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. "You sure about this, Jace?" Mick asked, after a long drag. "This ain't some street scrap. They're turning it into a bloody event. It's gonna be a circus, mate. Cameras everywhere, betting rings, dirty money." Jason wiped the sweat from his brow. "Let 'em. I'm not going there. To play games." Mick chuckled darkly. "Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of." Behind the scenes, Ricky wasn't just training. He was planning. Vince, his slimy manager, had pulled strings to stack the deck. The gloves would be custom, lighter than regulation, giving Ricky's power shots more sting. The ref, a friend of Vince's, ready to look the other way if Ricky got rough. Even the ring itself would be rigged, the canvas just a little softer under Ricky's side to give him better spring on his punches. Ricky wasn't just trying to win. He was trying to humiliate Jason in front of millions. Fight night arrived faster than anyone expected. The arena was packed, a roaring wild crowd thirsty for blood. Celebrities lined the front rows, flashing expensive smiles and designer clothes. Bookies raced around the corners shouting odds. The smell of hot dogs and cheap beer filled the air, mixed with the electric tension of the night. In the locker room, Jason wrapped his hands slowly, methodically, like he had 100 times before. Mick taped the final layer, pulling it tight. "You, ready to break his heart, lad?" Mick asked, a rare flicker of pride in his voice. Jason cracked his knuckles. "I'm ready to remind him why you don't spit on the sport." Meanwhile, Ricky strutted to the ring in a custom gold robe, fireworks exploding behind him, rap music blasting through the speakers. The crowd went nuts, half cheering, half booing. Ricky soaked it all in like a drug. Jason's walkout was the opposite. No music, no lights, no fanfare. Just the sound of his boots on the concrete and the sudden hush that followed him. He climbed into the ring, eyes locked on Ricky, and stood there like a statue while the announcer babbled about the grudge match of the year. The ref called them to the center. "You both know the rules," the ref said, clearly looking at Ricky more than Jason. "Keep it clean. Touch gloves." Ricky shoved his glove into Jason's chest instead of tapping. Jason didn't flinch. He just stared, ice cold, and stepped back to his corner. The bell was about to ring. The world was watching, and Jason knew. Whatever Ricky thought was going to happen tonight, he was dead wrong. The bell rang. For a split second there was silence, like the whole world held its breath. Then Ricky came charging out of his corner like a bull, fists swinging, throwing big bombs right from the start. It wasn't smart boxing, it was rage. Desperation dressed up like confidence. Jason didn't bite. He moved with that same terrifying calmness, slipping and weaving, letting Ricky waste energy, watching, reading every sloppy punch. The crowd was on its feet already, roaring, flashing lights, cameras everywhere. Jason knew he wasn't here just to win. He was here to break Ricky down the way bullies needed to be broken, not with one lucky punch, but methodically, painfully, so he'd never forget. Ricky lunged forward with a haymaker, and Jason sidestepped, countered with a jab to the ow, nose that snapped Ricky's head back. Blood spurted immediately. Ricky stumbled but stayed on his feet, spitting blood onto the canvas. "Come on, old man," Ricky yelled, trying to mask his panic. "Fight me." Jason didn't answer. His silence was louder than any insult. They circled. Ricky feinted, trying to bait Jason, but his moves were obvious now. All muscle, no brain. Jason stepped inside, ducked a wild swing, and drove a brutal left hook into Ricky's ribs. The sound was ugly, like a tree branch snapping. Ricky gasped and stumbled back. The crowd roared again. Some were screaming for Ricky to fight smarter. Others just wanted to see someone get knocked out. In the third minute, Ricky got desperate. He dropped his hands low, pretending to taunt, but then rushed Jason and grabbed him around the neck, trying to wrestle him to the ground. The ref pretended not to see it. Just like Vince had arranged, Jason shoved Ricky off with a brutal elbow, to the side, hidden in the scuffle. Ricky staggered wide-eyed and Jason moved in. Left jab, right hook, uppercut. Each punch hit like a hammer, pushing Ricky back, breaking him apart piece by piece. Suddenly, Ricky lashed out with a dirty move, a thumb to Jason's eye. Jason jerked back, blinking hard, his vision swimming. The crowd booed. Even the cameras caught it this time. Mick, shouting from the corner, yelled, "Ref, are you bloody blind?" The ref hesitated, but the crowd's anger was getting loud. He warned Ricky, but didn't take a point. Another gift from Vince. Jason shook his head, cleared his vision, and locked eyes with Ricky again. No more games. No more patience. The next time Ricky threw a wild punch, Jason caught his arm mid-swing, twisted it, and slammed his fist straight into Ricky's exposed side. An ancient, brutal move straight out of street fighting, something no ref could unsee, even if he wanted to. Ricky howled in pain, clutching his ribs. Jason moved in, relentless now. Every punch told a story. This was for mocking the old fighter. This was for thinking respect was a joke. This was for every bloody kid who thought arrogance was strength. The final moment came fast and ugly. Jason faked a jab, baiting Ricky into lifting his chin, and then drove a savage right hook straight across Ricky's jaw. Time slowed for a heartbeat. Ricky's eyes rolled back. His body collapsed in a heap, face first onto the canvas. The entire arena erupted, some screaming in awe, others gasping in horror. Jason stood over him, breathing heavy but calm, his fists still raised in case Ricky somehow tried to rise. But Ricky wasn't moving. Not this time, not after that. The ref rushed in, waving his arms frantically, calling it. Medical teams stormed the ring. Vince was shouting something, but nobody was listening. Jason stepped back, looked around at the sea of flashing lights and stunned faces, and for 1 second he felt nothing. Just the cold, brutal satisfaction of a job done right. No pose, no victory roar. Jason turned and walked back to his corner, where Mick was waiting with a tired smile. "Bloody hell," Mick muttered. "You broke him, mate. Proper broke him." Jason wiped the blood off his gloves and gave a small, humorless laugh. "He broke himself," Jason said. "I just showed him the mirror." The aftermath was bigger than anyone expected. Clips of Ricky lying unconscious on the mat flooded the internet within minutes. News channels replayed the knockout from every angle. Slow-motion breakdowns. Expert analyses. Overnight, Jason's name was back in every headline, not as a washed-up action star, but as the man who humbled the so-called unstoppable rage. But Jason didn't care. While reporters camped outside his house, while promoters begged him to sign deals for rematches and TV interviews, Jason quietly disappeared. No statements, no media tour. He wasn't interested in making a career out of someone else's downfall. Meanwhile, Ricky's fall was uglier than anyone imagined. He spent 2 days in the hospital with a cracked jaw and 3 broken ribs. By the time he was discharged, sponsors had started pulling out. His social media accounts, once buzzing with millions of followers, turned into a battlefield of mockery and pity. Worse, private footage leaked showing Ricky and Vince's plans to rig the match, including the dirty glove switch and the corrupt ref setup. The world that once worshipped Ricky Malone turned on him faster than he could blink. He tried to put out a video claiming Jason had fought dirty too, but nobody bought it. His credibility was gone. By the end of the week, Ricky announced a temporary retirement from boxing, code for the fact that no promoter wanted to touch him anymore. He went from being a headline champ to a cautionary tale almost overnight. And Jason? He sat on the balcony of a quiet coastal cottage, staring at the waves crashing against the shore, the sky painted orange and purple by the setting sun. Mick had found the place for him, a hideaway where the noise couldn't reach. Mick joined. Him, carrying 2 beers, he dropped into a chair with a groan, handing Jason a bottle. "Cheers, mate," Mick said, clinking his bottle against Jason's. Jason smiled faintly and took a sip. You ever think about what comes next? Mick asked after a long silence. You could cash in, you know. Make a fortune. They're offering stupid money for a series of fights. Jason shook his head slowly. I'm done fighting for crowds, he said. If I fight again, it'll be for something that matters. Mick chuckled. You always were a stubborn bastard. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the sun sink lower. Later that night, Jason checked his phone for the first time in days. Buried under hundreds of messages, one stood out. A simple text from the old trainer who had once believed in him, the one Ricky had humiliated before. It read, You didn't just fight for me. You fought for everyone who ever got stepped on. Thank you, kid. Jason stared at the words for a long moment. Then he turned off the phone, placed it face down on the table, and leaned back in his chair. In the distance, the sound of the ocean filled the night. Steady, strong, endless, just like a real fighter should be.